Hello and welcome back to Microsoft Azure monitoring section. In this section, we will be working on Microsoft Azure monitoring completely, what exactly the Microsoft Azure monitoring and how that will be useful for us. So we will start with the introduction. That includes our overview of what are the components which are involved within the Microsoft Azure monitoring, and then we would go for further with some of the demos. So let's understand what exactly the Microsoft Azure monitoring. Monitoring is a service within the Microsoft Azure cloud that helps you to increase the performance and availability of your applications and services by collecting and analyzing and acting on telemetry data from your cloud as well as your on-premises environments. So uh, what are the benefits? What you're going to get it out of this as you're monitoring is you can detect and diagnostic any kind of issues across your applications and its dependencies with the feature of application insight. So we are going to work with the different components within the which falls under Microsoft Azure monitoring. Maybe after this slide you would be understanding more about what other components are involved. Let's understand what are the benefits you're going to get it out of uh, Microsoft Azure monitoring. And now you can correlate infrastructure issues with the Azure monitoring for the VMs as well as for the Microsoft Azure monitoring for your containers if at all you have the containers. And also you can drill into your monitoring data with the help of log analytic, which is again additional service which again falls under Azure monitoring section. And with that you can get more in detailed information for your troubleshooting purpose. With a deep diagnostic log information can be collected and that can be even visualized, and you can run a lot of queries on top of it, so which we are going to do that in the upcoming lectures. But for now we will understand what exactly uh, this Azure monitoring as a benefit for us. So it supports operations at a scale with the smart alerts and automate actions. It means that let's say you have an VM and which is currently utilizing maybe a 90% of the CPU. So you got that alert. So when you get that smart alert, you can integrate that alert to trigger some of the workbook to do the automated tasks. Let's say it can scale up so that that VM becomes the scaled to another layer or maybe another higher scaling of number of CPUs can be increased. So such kind of configuration can be done with a fully automated method. And at the same time, you can also trigger the specific one with your ITSM so that you get an alert or ticket gets created and it will be automatically assigned to a specific team, which is your Intel team or whatever the team you wanted to send it. So all that can be fully automated and that is fully integrated with the Azure monitoring. These are some of the benefits. Now let's also talk about the last point within this slide, which is the create visualization of your Azure dashboard. So you have a real visualization of your data and you can create that with the Azure dashboards, and you can integrate, you can add that data, whatever it is coming either from the log analytics or maybe from the monitoring metrics. All that will be pushed into a dashboard so that you have a proper uh, dashboard where you can have full information, and also you can automate with the work. Let's understand more about Azure monitoring. What are the sources where it can collect and other information? So the first point would be the source. So when we talk about the source, definitely Azure monitor has to collect or has to work on some kind of source data. So what are those data? So if you look at here, the first one would be the applications, operating systems, and your Azure resources or subscriptions as your tenant, or even any of the REST API based custom sources also can be accepted. So let's say if I'm talking about the tenant, I can collect the audit logs. If I'm talking about the subscriptions, maybe I'm talking about the service health and activity log. And if I'm talking about the resources, let's say metrics and diagnostic data or monitoring solutions, all that. And when I talk about the guest operating system, it could be a diagnostic extension, or maybe log analytics agent or dependency agent that will actually becomes as a source, and that gives the data for Azure monitoring. So what happens if you have the applications? So if you have the applications, you can monitor full life cycle of the applications with the application insights. That becomes as a one of the source. And now, once you have the source, basically these data, whatever it is collecting, let's say I told earlier metrics, I told about logs, audit logs, all that becomes into two major categories. So if you look at here, one is a metrics, which I'm going to talk, and also other one would be the logs. When we talk about the metrics are automatically collected that measures its performance. So it's purely about the performance specific, and logs are collected that shows the activity in your Azure, either applications or operating systems. It can be subscriptions. With a little configuration, you can collect more detailed logs from your Azure Monitoring Insight within your Azure Monitoring portal. So you can do as much as configuration, you can do it within the Azure portal, where you can do it all this configuration within the Azure monitoring menu to access a wide set of features to work with monitoring data collected across all of your applications, like diagnostic or all other different kind of logs. So basically you need to understand here two things. One is the metrics and logs. We are going to work on the metrics and the logs as we go further. If you take an example of any of the virtual machine within the Microsoft Azure portal, and you see here you have the dashboard under overview, which talks about the CPU and network with some kind of chart, right? These are the things which are coming from the metrics. So you can customize these data with more information. Let's say you can have here the CPU time, or maybe other metrics information which you wanted to pull out. Let's say you have you want to go for the data disk queue or read and write operations. All that can be customized, and you can drill down further with the different kind of chart methods like area chart, bar chart, all that. So these are coming from the metrics. So let's also understand about the logs. So logs are coming from under monitoring section under diagnostic settings. So these are the additional logs. So what would happen is when you enable these guest level monitoring, what happens is since we are configuring on a virtual machine, let's say that virtual machine application logs and security logs, all that logs also will be redirected. I mean, that data will be saved to within the monitoring specific area. Definitely that should go to one of the storage account, diagnostic storage account. So that's called the, here you need to go for a storage account to be created. That's where it will be redirected, and it will be there for some time to read those logs, and you can have that entire data will be populated into the Azure monitoring. And if you see the extensions of these virtual machines, there's only one extension. So what happens is when you enable that, actually uh, there will be another extension gets added to the virtual machine, and it would take advantage of that extension, and based on that it works. So we will jump back to PowerPoint and understand more about it, and we would be just trying to learn here as the a kind of overview, and we are not actually diving into the proper demos at this point of time, because it's just the overview section. And post to this we would be jumping into every possible options for the monitoring, and we will deep dive into that. Let's understand what we have done so far. Within this Azure monitoring, we talked about the data source and different data sources and different set of metrics or maybe logs that can be collected, and these are basically two different categories of the data type. One would be the metrics and other one would be the logs. So post to this, what we do is we would configure based on those metrics and the logs as the alerts, or maybe we would process this information to Azure Log Analytics services, where you will be running some of the queries so that you can visualize this data. That's what we are going to try as the overall. And let's understand furthermore. So we have gone through all these custom sources and the applications different source of the data, and these are categorized under metrics and the logs. So what would happen is you have a different total 5 different categories within the this specific data will be processed. As we understand earlier, Azure Monitor isn't just for monitoring Azure services though, since it can collect different type of data across any layer within your application stack. To illustrate this more, the data that Azure Monitor collects starts with the Azure platform. This includes the single sign-on information from your Azure Active Directory or Active Directory, like audit logs and the activity logs for your service health and configuration changes within your Azure resources. And those resource logs, along with the platform, which is the application platform, maybe or all kind of platform metrics which provides detail to the operating system and the performance of each resource. So if we take here as example for a minute for the compute resource such as a virtual machine. Let's say this virtual machine will be supporting your application infrastructure, requires an agent to collect logs and performance data from guest operating system workloads. These VMs can live in Azure or in maybe another cloud or even on your on premises. So you can connect to an existing System Center Operations Manager, that's SCOM. Um, the SCOM can be used for your monitoring purpose and integrate that from there. You can pull the data also. For your applications itself, we use the application insights features which would gives you more information for the Azure monitoring to collect detailed metrics and logs related to the platform and for the performance of the operations of an application written in any language for that matter in any environment. For everything else, as you monitor has the APIs, so you can use the custom APIs to collect the data, anything from the REST API client. And data from all resources is collected together. The Azure monitored into either metrics or the logs as we talked earlier, and this allows us to analyze the data across all of your resources using a common set of methods and tools. If you look at more about the metrics and logs one more time, on metrics are stored in the time series database and that are very lightweight and capable of supporting near to the real-time scenarios, which making them practically useful for alerting and fast decision of issues. Let's say if the spike of the CPU is higher, you get the real time and you can act on them on immediate basis and you can take the fast decision on that issue. And if you look at the logs contains the different kinds of data that you can get it from the log analytics with the log analytics dashboard. So what happens is it will gather from a different sets of the logs, so not just from the one source, so it would contains the multiple source. So that means you are getting a more powerful information because the source is multiple, and this information can be queried with the query language, and they're especially useful for performing complex analysis across your data from a variety of sources. Once the data is being collected, Azure Monitor has a complete set of features to analyze and it can act on that so that you can interactively work with metric data using Metrics Explorer and within the Microsoft Azure portal. So here what exactly the log analytics. So if you look at the log analytics is what it is performing here is it's a kind of tool that lets you write query to analyze all of your log data and interactively work with the results and add metrics in a form of graphics and output from your log queries to as your dashboard. So you can get this information populated in your dashboard, so you can simply go to your dashboard to see what's going on in a single view for your Azure metrics, and these dashboards can be exported and imported so that you can share with your colleagues. So it's so easy. Once one person has created, you can always go and view it, that specific dashboards. Let's also understand about what are these five different things. So if you look at here, you can integrate with whatever the data is coming based on the data matrix or logs. You can integrate with them with the logic apps or functions, or you can also integrate with third-party REST APIs. And you can, once it is integrated, you can respond based on the alerts, and these alerts can be auto scaled. Let's say if a VM is spiked up, then it can go for auto scale or increase the size of the VM. And you can analyze with the help of metrics and log analytics, as we talked earlier. And whatever is going on, that all can be visualized in the form of dashboards or views, or you can also even integrate with your Power BI and workbooks. And once we have done that, the final one would be the insight. So when we talk about the insight, insight provides a customized monitoring experience built on Azure Monitor data and different features that it has for particular applications and services. Application Insights is the most extensive, and it provides a sophisticated set of features for monitoring ages, and performs the data in addition to identifying exceptions throughout all of the components of Azure different your applications. Microsoft provides insights of some of the more common Azure services that provides additional value beyond the standard Microsoft Azure monitoring features used in monitor these services. Let's take an example to understand this statement. If you take a current insights of the include the virtual machines, containers, or networking services, or other services that are regularly being added. So it gives you the direct data for you without going for the in-depth of your application insight information. In addition to that, when you go for the insight information, you get the more in detailed information so that you can analyze and you can act and you can monitor that data. So you may have other tools in your environment, such as the maybe APM providers or DevOps tools, or maybe visualization tools, or third-party analytics, or SIMI tools, or automation services, or ITSM. So you can integrate all this information with all of these different third-party tools, and you can get a benefit out of it. Let's say one final example before we wind up, like you have some application is going wrong, so you get that information from the application insights of the debug logs, which are sent to log analytics, and that information is visualized with the help of either Power BI or views or from the dashboard. And what you can do is, since this is going down, you can set a conditional alert. If this alert triggers, you go and create a ticket or send an email as an alert, or do a SMS, or do a paging, as well as the to run some kind of workbooks for the automation, and that kind of third-party integrations also you can do it. So it's a full-fledged Azure monitoring as the solution for you. So let's conclude what we have learned so far. So we learn about these are the key bullet points, like you can monitor and you can collect the data from different sources, and you can even think about your application data, or maybe operating system, or it can be any of the Azure resources, or from your on-premises, or for that matter any of the cloud data can be monitored. And you can also monitor application data, guest operating system monitoring, and as your resource monitoring, as your subscription auditing, all that can be done. So this concludes about the Azure monitoring. I hope this lecture is useful for you, and we will be catching you in the next lecture. I hope this lecture is useful for you. We will be catching you in the next upcoming lecture, more about practically how best we can work with the metrics and different type of queries within the log analyzing, and creating, adding diagnostic settings and different logs, collecting and storing them in your Azure storage. And also we work with the storage account, how the logs are stored. So this is all about the Azure monitoring. You can also work with the alerts, you can set some kind of alerts, and that would trigger a ticket for that. All that will be exciting things will be uh, we will be working in the upcoming lecture. I hope this is useful for you. Thank you for watching this.